Welcome, everybody. We're going to just take a minute while everybody enters our Zoom room here. Welcome to Wow Week. We're so excited to, hey, everybody. We're so excited to finally, after so long, get together again for another one of our virtual get-togethers, another one of our virtual Wow Weeks. We have just a few more people we want to let in here. So it's kind of an interesting time to be having Wow Week. You know, May is here, and so many people are traveling internationally very soon now for the first time since the pandemic started. And so we really wanted to kind of try to reach people. I mean, some people are already traveling for the spring, but we really wanted to try to reach people when they most need the kind of intelligence and strategies and tools and help that this group of experts is able to provide. So that's why we're doing it at this very moment. So why don't we go ahead, and I'm sure there are a few more people who are going to be coming along, but let's go ahead and get started right now. So as I said, welcome to Wow Week. You know, this is our annual virtual get together where we try to inform and prepare all you travelers for what lies ahead for the rest of the year. This summer is a doozy. Parts of the world are already like sold out in May and June, Italy, France, and Greece. It's a real adventure out there in a lot of destinations that are very popular. And then there are other places that are under the radar and fabulous and so safe right now that people are ignoring. So hopefully after today, people will have a lot of ideas of sort of like some of the smartest travel decisions they could be making right now. And, you know, I think it's important for people to remember also, I mean, a lot of people are acting like, you know, oh my God, time to travel, we're free, no more pandemic. It's not really exactly like they're out there internationally. You know, you still have to test negative to be able to fly back to the United States, to board your flight. And so, you know, the important thing is, you know, to do all the smart things, have a safe trip so that you get home on time. And the experts here with us today from the Wow List know how to do exactly that for travelers. They've been doing an amazing job of it throughout the pandemic, in fact, ever since people started traveling again. So welcome. And first of all, let me introduce Billy Cohen on our team. Billy is our content director and director of digital strategy. Billy, you want to say hello?
Hey everyone, it's good to be back here with you guys. A couple of housekeeping things. We're going to be taking questions through the Q&A box for this webinar, not through the chat section. I'll be putting in links to the chat section though, that might be useful, but if you don't catch them, don't worry. I'm going to send out an email with all the useful links from this talk later on, and also in future newsletters. So that's a little nudge to sign up for our newsletter. I swear it's not spammy. We put it together every week to give you the latest and most up-to-date intel, so it's really useful to have. The other thing I just wanted to say, for those of you who are new to us and not familiar with what we do here, Wendy, Brooke, and I are longtime travel journalists, and our mission is to make travel better. And we do that by publishing, constantly updating the Wow List of trusted travel experts, which you might have seen. The 2022 version came out this week. It's a collection of really knowledgeable and really well-connected trip planners around the world, some of whom are with us tonight. They're all rigorously vetted and road tested, even and especially during the pandemic. Based on Wendy's decades of experience, and she won't brag about this, but she was the first journalist to put together a list like this, and also based on trip reviews from all of you who send them in after you travel with one of our recommended Wow listers. So basically we vet them, we make the introduction, and through Wendy's trip monitoring system, we make sure that you get treated like a VIP and that you get the chance to review these planners after your trip for the other travelers, because that's how the Wow list stays up to date and relevant. And you can imagine, with the travel landscape shifting so much these days, it's more useful than ever to have a local fixer in your corner. So along with the Wow list and these travel talks that we're doing all week, every day at 6 p.m. Eastern, our goal is to make sure that you have everything you need to have a safe and rewarding and amazing travel experience this year. So I just wanted to go over all that. Thank you again for being here, and I'll see you in the chat box.
Thank you, Billy. I certainly could not have said it any better myself. I'm very impressed. I wish I could do that. Let me also introduce Brooke Wilkinson on the team. Many of you know Brooke very well because she is at the other end of all of the emails you send in with your travel questions. Where do I go and how do I do it and who do I use and what insurance do I get? Brooke, you want to say hi?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm just scrolling through the names. I see so many familiar names, and it's so great to be here together again. And I'm looking forward to a wonderful hour of dreaming of travel in the next couple of months.
Yep, we could all use a lot of that right now. And let me also just, I want to thank our sponsor of Wow Week, MedJet, which is an emergency travel assistance membership program that provides medical, air transport, and crisis response. They transport for COVID globally. I've had a MedJet Horizon family membership ever since the kids were tiny, and it gives me great peace of mind when we travel nowadays. And more than that, MedJet makes it possible for us to have this Wow Week and for the team and I to answer so many of your travel questions every day. So thank you, MedJet. And now let's move along to, I would first like to call on Sarah Farag, who is a New Zealand specialist on the WOW list. Sarah from Southern Crossings. She's in Auckland right now, where I think it's the morning. And New Zealand opened yesterday. Finally, it's one of the, finally after more than 2 years, it has reopened. Everyone has been waiting with bated breath because New Zealand, it's going to be in such high demand very soon because of all of the great outdoorsy space, the open air, the peaceful. There's so much about New Zealand that is like so perfect in a pandemic. And so Sarah, why don't you tell us first of all, like, when is the time to go to New Zealand if you really want to do it right?
Yeah. Oh, hello, Wendy, and so good to be here. Sarah Farag, Southern Crossings, New Zealand. Look, it's May. It's the beginning of May, and I've always been a fan of our shoulder seasons, as I think you know. It's a gorgeous time to be here. It's idyllic, late settled summer weather. At the moment, the people arriving are those reconnecting with family and friends. So travelers are really yet to land here. So if you really wanted to think about coming now in May or early June, beautiful outdoors, great settled weather, lovely lower season rates, which is an advantage, and wonderful wildlife opportunities, day hikes, and abundance of space and privacy.
And are there any sort of new, adventure thrills or other developments on the new? I would assume that during the pandemic, the people in New Zealand were busy innovative and creating a few new things to entice travelers when they returned.
Well, you can always have an adventure and a thrill-seeking moment in New Zealand. That's not hard. Look, it's really been this emergence that was happening before COVID a little bit, but this trend has really continued through the 2 years of development of these beautiful new standalone villas. And a lot of them can be quite rustic, but the luxury might be the setting that they're in, and it's just taking advantage of these expansive rural locations, which we have in abundance with just 5 million people here in the size of California. But then some of them are definitely the multi-bedroom luxury villas that are sort of run with the services of our lodge properties, but have the privacy and seclusion of a luxury villa. And some are connected to our lodge properties, but some are really standalone. And the other unique opportunity.
Yeah, people love, everyone wants a villa nowadays.
Yeah.
They became very popular during the pandemic. Now, Australia opened back in, what was it, like February or so?
Yeah.
And finally, and so I think there are a lot of people out there who are thinking about combining New Zealand and Australia, which of course takes some time, really probably 2 or 3 weeks to really do that properly. But if people do want to combine New Zealand and Australia, when would be the right moment from now through the rest of the year?
Yeah, so I mean, Australia is struggling with the global problem of availability, but there are still some pockets of it there. I'm always, again, we play with our seasons, and it's really our fall and spring, which is just the opposite of your fall and spring. But we play with the seasons where you've got the cooler months of New Zealand, but we sort of dovetail into the warmer months of the far north of Australia, and conversely we just flip it depending on the time of the year. So it's playing with our seasons and when a traveller can come, but again, over those shoulder months is really more idyllic.
Well, thank you. I'm taking my family to New Zealand. In fact, I bought tickets on the new nonstop from JFK to Auckland. It's about the fourth longest nonstop in the world, but I've been dying to get my kids there ever since Tim and I had our honeymoon there 22 years ago. And so, so anyway, that's first on my list. So let's move along now to Joe Uden, who is with us in Israel. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Wendy. Hi, everyone.
I think Joe wins the prize for being up the latest today. Is it like one in the morning your time?
Yes, it's after 1, correct.
Oh gosh. Thank you so much for staying up late. I know the audience appreciates it very much.
My pleasure.
So I think that there's a similar message for Israel that there is for New Zealand, which is go now. Go before all the tour groups return, before just the tourists come back en masse. Would you say?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the infrastructure it's not ready for all the buses, and the companies really haven't geared up for that yet, and they're not yet coming, and people are afraid to come on the buses. So people are trusting their travel agents and trusting the experts, and they're coming privately, but they're a little wary still. Israel was late to open up, and you need a PCR test to come to Israel. So yes, people are coming, but it's more of we're very busy, but the industry isn't quite ready for everyone. So it's not as many people as we can handle. So yeah, there are definitely hotels available and guides and everything.
And there's a lot of eating outdoors now, right? Didn't they add a lot of restaurants and stuff like outdoor cafes?
Right. So, the weather right now is gorgeous, and, through the summer, there's always outdoor dining. So they've limited some of the space inside, and that was part of when we still had restrictions. They limited the inside and expanded the outdoor space. And from now through October, it doesn't rain. So there's plenty of shade, plenty of outdoor space. A lot of the sites that you want to see are outside anyway, the Western Wall, Masada, Church of the Holy Sepulchre, even from the outside, and part of it's from the outside. So yeah, there's a lot to see on the outside.
What about the indoor sites, the indoor museums? Do they have capacity restrictions?
Yes. So you have to make a reservation to get into Yad Vashem and the Israel Museum, and even some outdoor sites like Masada, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. You have to make a reservation online before you go, or they won't let you in. And they're restricting how many people can come in. It's only 25% of what was once upon a time. So before COVID.
And tell us about one of the newest opportunities, I think, is these new direct flights where you can combine Morocco with Israel.
Right. Morocco and the Gulf states. We've recently have peace agreements with those states. So a lot of people are now coming to Tel Aviv. They're going into Jordan and Egypt. Jim can talk to that, and Hisham, but for Morocco. But yes, there are direct flights every week to Egypt, to the Gulf states, to Morocco, and it's definitely opened up the Middle East for multiple state visits. Absolutely.
And has the war in Ukraine had any effect on incoming travelers?
It hasn't had any effect on the travelers. Well, it has in one aspect. We were, I think the Russian tourism to Israel was the second largest after North America. So they're not coming. And as well, the Russians are in Syria, which is on our northern border, and they don't want to antagonize us, and we don't want to antagonize them. So there's a lot of there's quiet on our northern border, which is reassuring. So it's a pretty safe time. There's a lot less tourists, especially from Eastern Europe.
Mhm. Great, good. Well, thank you so much for that little glimpse of the situation in Israel. I'd love to move on now to Gwen Kozlowski, who is with Exeter International, and who is an Eastern Europe specialist. And I would love, as well as Central Europe, tell us what the war in Ukraine has really meant for you guys in terms of where are travelers wanting to go, where are they not wanting to go? Aren't you just back from Vienna and Prague?
Yes. Actually, I just spent 8 days in Vienna and Prague last month, and then I actually leave a week from Wednesday to go back to Austria. So I'm very excited about that. But as far as how it's affected us, I mean, obviously, all travel to Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus is off. I was surprised that people, especially in the last couple of months, have expressed some fears about going to Poland, just because they look at the map and Poland's close and they're nervous about that. However, we have also had growth in people wanting to go to Poland to volunteer how they can with refugees, which has been heartwarming. And there are a number of opportunities that you can do with that doesn't mean you have to go to like a scary border area or anything like that. So we're seeing kind of a rise in people being cognizant of the refugee crisis that's happening right now and wanting to help, which is great. And then for the rest of our travelers, it's, Austria, Switzerland, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Germany. It's a lot of outdoor mountains, basically. And
But isn't there, like, I believe there's space at some things that normally you can't, like, you could actually get tickets to the Salzburg Music Festival.
Yes. I have a number of Wendy Perrin clients that are traveling to the Salzburg Music Festival, and they got tickets, which is great because that one has no black market, FYI. You either get them legally or you don't get them. And also this year, a lot of people don't realize Oberammergau in Germany, which was postponed in 2020, it happens once every 10 years, the Passion Play, is happening again this year. And because there aren't any like giant groups, and especially no like big Asian group tours, there are still tickets available, and that starts like next week. And I have had every single person who has asked about tickets to Oberammergau, I've been able to get them, and in like the best category. So it's been surprising, and yeah, it's still possible. So
Can you just give us a quick idea of what are a couple of things that you could do in Poland to help refugees?
sure. Well, you can sign up actually officially with World Central Kitchen, but they require like a week-long commitment to volunteer with them. But we did have somebody who was going to do that in Shumshel, which is like this teeny little town near the border. But for people who want to do something on a smaller scale, or for not a whole week commitment to volunteer work, we can take people to kitchens in both Warsaw and Krakow that are cooking food for refugees, because the Polish people are housing refugees in a variety of different ways, in hotels, in private homes, in centers. So there are a lot of like labor intensive kind of ways you can help, even if it's just chopping vegetables for a day, but it really makes a difference.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that information.
Thanks.
And now I'd like to move over to the most popular place on the planet right now, it feels like, Italy. Everyone wants to go to Italy right now. Andrea Grisdale, you're on Lake Como, and it's past midnight your time, isn't it?
It certainly is.
Well, Andrea is with IC Villaggio, and thank you so much for staying up late to tell us about the situation in Italy. It's sold out for a lot of the summer, pretty much by now. And so I guess the main question is, like, if you really are desperate to go to Italy this year and not take advantage of any of these other opportunities, and you want to go to the Amalfi Coast like everybody else, what do you do?
What we would recommend very, very highly, Wendy, is forget about every month before September and October. And in all honesty, September, I think, is my favorite month to be in Italy. It's one of the most beautiful months to be here. Also October too. And we're seeing much more interest in November. You know, when you're talking about the Amalfi Coast, whether you go in September or October, you still have a wonderful temperature. The hotels, as you know, they're fantastic. The nature is beautiful at that time of the year. If you want to swim in the sea, you can definitely still swim in the sea, both in September and October. It's a great time also to be going into the valleys and maybe doing some wine tasting. Great time for hiking as well. So we are definitely encouraging our travelers to think of the fall as opposed to coming during the summer.
Mm-hmm. And so the fall, there's the Amalfi Coast is great in October.
Yeah.
Tuscany, there are a lot of wine festivals.
Absolutely. Tuscany is a wonderful place to be during the months of September, October into November for the festivals. Also, a lot of people are requesting to walk the Via Francigena, which is the pilgrim's route. It's becoming more and more popular, walking from place to place. And we obviously take care of people's bags for them. But that is a great way to see the different different ideas of Tuscany, the towns, the villages, as the landscape also changes, whether you go from the Val d'Orcia over to the Chianti region. Another wine region, which is a wonderful place to be at that time of the year, is the Franciacorta wine region, which is between Bergamo and Lake Garda in the north. And of course, top of many people's lists, especially for the month of November, is Piemonte, again in the north. And that is a wonderful time of the year for the truffles, the wine, the mushrooms, the cheese festivals. It's great for biking, also self-driving as well, because we are seeing a lot of interest in people who want to go out there and explore by themselves.
So if you're a foodie, it sounds to me like, I mean, you really want to experience the truffles and cheese and wine of the Piedmont region.
Absolutely, Wendy. And as we love to say, you really have to work very, very hard to find a bad meal in Italy. So whether you choose Piemonte, Tuscany, Umbria, Sicily, Puglia, you name it, your good food is always awaiting for you.
Right. Well, great. Well, good to know. So I just hope that everybody out there who's asking for the Amalfi Coast and all of these other very popular places in Italy thinks about heading there this fall, especially since, I mean, Andrea, I would think price-wise, certainly, wouldn't you think that this fall is going to make a lot more sense than next spring?
Absolutely, Wendy, especially if we are thinking October, November, December. September is still high season from a price point of view, but the more you go into October, the more the prices, especially in the properties, are much more favorable.
Right, right. Because I could just imagine if it's like this year, I can't even imagine what spring of 2023 is going to look like. So go this fall.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now I want to move a little bit south of Italy down to one of my favorite islands in the whole world. And so remember how we were just saying a few minutes ago that travelers are just flooding to these very popular, well-known places in Europe like Italy, France, Greece, whereas there are these under the radar places that are equally fabulous that for some reason people are ignoring. And one of my favorites of those is Malta. It's an island in the Mediterranean Sea. It is so historic and charming and gorgeous and unique. And it's like everybody throughout this whole, COVID, everyone's wanted to be on an island in the open air where it's sunny and life is easy. That's Malta. And it's in the Mediterranean and it stays that way through December. So I want to introduce Jason Camilleri Allen of Exclusively Malta. Jason, you just flew there today, didn't you? Is it midnight your time?
Yep, just crouching on 12:30. Yes, and I did come in today.
Right.
Happy to see that. Pretty much all COVID restrictions in terms of entry into Malta have now been lifted. So,
but you've still got a very high, it's like a 93% vaccination rate or something. Malta's been
boosted rate and boosters.
Yeah.
I mean, in fact, Malta was one of the few that actually had an expiration on the first phase of the 2-dose regimen. So we've right from get-go, we've adopted the whole vaccine mandate, and we've done really well through that.
Yep. And so has either the pandemic or the sort of geopolitical situation in Eastern Europe, has any of that affected tourism to Malta?
Well, I mean, we haven't had direct discussions in regards to the geopolitical situation, but I will tell you that this May has been the best May we've ever had. And, whether it's those most discerning travelers looking for something new and unique and different, or, being a little bit more savvy to kind of change up their travel patterns this spring, it's definitely had an impact on business here. I think also people are now becoming quite aware that the position of Malta in the Mediterranean lends itself to a very, very convenient way of combining countries, whether it's Italy, and those who are traveling to Italy and may not find the inventory you want there, we're only about an hour flight down or a 90-minute ferry from Sicily, or a quick connection to Israel or Morocco. So anywhere along within the Med or connection, we're right there.
I think a lot of people in the US may not realize that you can connect very easily in London too. You can just fly to connect or London or Frankfurt or a number of different European hubs.
Mm-hmm. The main connections all through Europe. I came through Munich today.
Right. And so tell us a little bit about, I'm sure people in Malta have been busy during this pandemic, as they have in every country, sort of like creating new experiences, new local insider type experiences. Can you just tell us quickly one or two cool experiences you can do in Malta that would blow people's minds?
Sure. I mean, from our business standpoint, we've always kind of approached the concept of getting beyond the keyhole. And taking WendyPerrin clients beyond that keyhole where others can actually only look through. And a couple examples are, one, we've connected with a pipe organ restorer here in Malta, which is kind of like his profession, but he's never ever taken his profession and explained it to individuals. So now we've created this experience where he would take into any of the private chapels around Malta or into the Medina cathedrals and do private sessions of how he's restored and do like a nice recital for them. We've also, during the pandemic, have launched kind of a sub-brand under Exclusively Malta called Malta Rural Tours. So we've combined with a sustainable network in Malta that looks at the preservation of young farmers. And we're really trying to give back through travel to these individuals that are actually looking to create that sustainability circle on the island. So whether it's helping local farmers, going to strawberry picking, or having cooking experiences in private olive groves, we've definitely seen that come to life.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Jason.
You're welcome.
So now I want to move along to Sherry Briggs, who is in. Sherry, where are you? Are you in Lusaka? Are you in Zambia right now?
Yeah, we're in Zambia.
Right.
We are.
Where it's God knows what time in the morning. Thank you so much for staying up, and
My pleasure. Thanks.
so we could learn from you. So I'm so happy you're here, because I feel like one of the most misunderstood types of travel during this pandemic has been safaris. Like, people immediately thought, oh, Africa is going to be dangerous, whereas safari trips have actually been one of the safest things you could possibly do. You're in the
Absolutely.
open air all the time, right? And everyone who's gone on a safari has just been blown away by how safe they felt the whole time, and what a fabulous time they had, and how there were very few other people in the camps. But now people have caught on. So tell us what's happening now. People, like, I think this summer is quite busy, right? Where everybody's realizing, like, oh my God, it's time to take my safari.
Well, yeah, I would say, Wendy, in the beginning, even a year ago, people started coming back when countries started opening back up. And most of those people were people who'd been to Africa before. We have a lot of repeat travelers. And most people that come to Africa come more than once. It's not a one-off destination. It becomes actually an addiction after a while. We have people who've been 20 plus times. But so those people understood that this is the safest place to be. If you can get through standing in a line at immigration and taking a flight over and so on, as soon as you arrived in the African continent, you were going to be on your own in vast open spaces, open air the whole time, and so on. So the first wave of travelers was pretty much repeat travelers, but now a lot of people have cottoned onto it, and a lot of people are really looking for that wide open, free experience. And they don't necessarily, I think a lot of people have been commenting, they're not necessarily comfortable with inside yet. They still want to be outside. So Africa definitely offers outside almost all the time. So yeah, things are definitely picking up. There right now, if you were here right now, you would go to camps that are not that busy. But by middle of June, July, very busy. We are now struggling to find space. If you want 2 or 3 rooms or tents, it can be challenging. If you're one couple, it's much easier. You know, it's a lot easier. Families, people who, and there are a lot of families, as you say, Wendy, that are looking to travel all together. That's really rough. That's probably not going to happen until October, November, which is also a great time to come to Africa. In fact, if you have a strong resistance to hot temperatures, it's the best for safari, because that's the dry season in most of the safari companies or countries, and that's when the animals flock to the water. So you can see huge herds of animals around the water, but they're there because they're hot, and you'll be hot too. It's just an inevitability, and you're not in an enclosed, air-conditioned vehicle. You'll be hot. So if you're willing to put up with that, you're going to have the most extraordinary experience and share that with a lot of animals. So that's sort of the trade-off. Right now is maybe my personal favorite time of year for Safari Africa, at least in Southern Africa, which is where we are right now. It's still rainy up in East Africa, but it's beautiful. I mean, it's very green, but it's very cool. It's not hot, but things are picking up.
Yeah, how has the pandemic changed the safari experience in terms of, are the landscapes any different, or is the wildlife any different? Are the lodges any different?
Well, as far as I can see, and I've been all over the place in the last year, the landscapes are the same. The wildlife is, to the visitor, visually the same, if not better. I think the animals maybe have chilled out a little bit. They're maybe more comfortable with their environment. They haven't been as intensely pursued as in the last years. The lodges have for sure improved, because Africa was so busy for so many years. Nobody had a break. Nobody had time to fix things up. So, I think a lot of the hospitality industry suffered more than Africa, because there are no mortgages here. Everybody owns what they own. So, and they made quite a bit of money before 2019. So they had time and they had the funds to refurbish and do all the repairs and do the rebuilding and do the renovation, and even break down and rebuild places that were getting a little bit tired. So everywhere we're going, we're amazed. It's better. It's not worse, that's for sure.
And so if somebody were choosing between trying to go on safari this year, let's say taking advantage of that time when it's not so busy, like October through the first 2 weeks of December, if they wanted to do this year or next year, which is their smartest move?
Well, honestly, the only difference will be cost, because things will go up next year for sure. I mean, they've gone up a bit this year. In some places we're seeing very dramatic increases, other places not as dramatic, but things are picking up. I mean, people were on a starvation diet in this industry for 2 years. So at some point, it's not that they're recouping their costs, they won't, but they have a lot of staff they're looking after. They're doing a lot of anti-poaching, and the costs of safari are they're high. There's no question about it. Safari is maybe the most expensive experience you can have unless you're renting a private villa in the Amalfi Coast, which can run a bit dear. But at the same time, you're paying for all the conservation. You're protecting thousands and thousands and thousands of acres of wilderness and millions of animals. So you're not getting a tax deduction, but you're definitely contributing to the well-being of the wilderness and the wildlife.
Right. Great. Thank you, Sherry. And speaking of the wilderness and wildlife and sustainability, I want to move on to Ali Almario of Premier Tours. Hi, Ali. Ali is one of the Galapagos specialists on the WOW list. And the Galapagos Islands have been open for most of this pandemic. I mean, that's been a place where a lot of people could go since close to the start for much longer than any other destination. And it's managed to stay a real bubble of safety. And I think the wildlife viewing has been great there. Ali, tell us about it.
Well, it's almost as if the sea lions missed people. I have gotten more reports of the sea lions being even more playful, even more interactive than any other time. I've been doing this for a really long time. They've been bumping masks, they've been nibbling on fins. They were just very much mixed people. But, Darwin said survival of the fittest, and the Galapagos survived.
And so if people, I would assume it's very popular right now. There isn't much availability probably for the summer months for families or the Christmas holiday. Well, you tell me, when is there availability in the Galapagos this year?
I think you can find availability if you're willing to go in October, November, early December. And then beyond that, you've had 2 years worth of postponed trips. A lot of the luxury ships that we work with, the small catamarans, only have 8 cabins. So when you've got families that are taking 3 or 4 cabins, you pretty much have a sold out ship. So my advice to most people is book as far in advance as possible. I've starting to get bookings for 2024 now, because spring break is crazy. The spring break for this year and next year is already, next year is getting pretty sold out. So if you are thinking of going with your families, I've got groups of 8, 9, 10 people. It's better to book way in advance and try to get the best weeks. People forget that there are only a handful of these small luxury ships. And if you want the best and you want small ship experiences, you've got to book now.
How large are the largest ships that are back in the Galapagos now?
Well, but the largest right now is about 100 people, and there are only a handful of those. But the majority, the demand that I see for FITs has always been the small ships, the small luxury ships. And what's new that's coming into the Galapagos now is starting next year is the Galapagos first super yacht. And when I talk super yacht, it's claiming to be the fastest ship in the Galapagos. The owner's suite has 10 windows, one of the largest cabins on board. It's going for about $25,000 a week per person.
What is the advantage of being on one of the fastest ships? What's the advantage of fast in the Galapagos?
I don't personally think that that's a reason to pick a ship. I think it's a nice selling point. But I think people are always looking for the newest. Yeah. And no one's wanting to keep up with the Joneses. They want to be the Joneses. They really want to be the first. And in the Galapagos, that's hard to do. So new things that are happening in the Galapagos, for example, which I love, is they're trying to reinvent the wheel. The first ever cruise I've ever seen geared towards autism. So it's a small yacht, 32 people, and they're hosting for a week, a full week geared towards families with autistic kids. So the people who are on board, the staff people, are all experts in autism. And I just think it's an incredible opportunity. I've never seen it anywhere before. So there's always photography trips. There's always, nuanced cooking trips, culinary trips. But I think the autism trip was just something very new and unique.
Yeah, it is. Well, thank you, Ali. Now I want to head across the Atlantic over to Morocco, which is another country that has been open for for a lot of the pandemic. And people have been returning from trips arranged by Hisham Aloui, who is with us today.
Hi.
And I think it must be about 11:30 or so where you are, so in Morocco. So thank you for joining us, Hisham. But Morocco is another one of those open air destinations where it's like an outdoor museum. You basically can be in the open air for every meal, you know, on your balcony, at your riad, at all the sites. And so why don't you tell us a bit about like what changes might have occurred in Morocco during the pandemic that are affecting trips that you can put together now?
Yeah, I'd say there's really two trends that would be interesting for folks listening in today. The first is that there are certain key markets that used to drive a lot of volume of travelers to Morocco that are still closed. The biggest one of which is obviously China, with the Chinese outbound trips still very limited. And so as a result, there are certain sites that used to be quite crowded with groups, particularly from the Asian market, that are now once again more free to be discovered without that phenomenon of overcrowding. A particular example of this would be Chefchaouen, which is this beautiful pearl of a village in the north of the country, very famous for its powder blue walls. But it's a small village where walking from one end to the other would take, call it 45 minutes. And so right before COVID, it had reached the point where we had stopped encouraging travelers to go there simply because it was not a pleasant experience. You had, 5 to 10 buses show up every day. And so this tiny little village was overrun, which was not a pleasant experience. So the first trend I would say is places like Chefchaouen that we were no longer taking people to because it was no longer a pleasant experience that are now once again able to be visited and enjoyed. So that's one trend. The second trend I'd mention is booking windows have shrunk significantly. So for those listening in who don't understand the term booking window, it's essentially when people are reserving their trip. In our case, before COVID, it was typically several months, right? So you'd book a trip today for 4 to 5 months from now. Now it's down to a matter of weeks. And so what that means is that the traditionally busy windows of the fall are still looking remarkably open. So it's interesting to hear some of our colleagues talk about their countries being already sold out. In our case, for Morocco, the fall is looking busy, but by no means is it sold out. So for anyone looking for destinations for that Thanksgiving break or the festive Christmas period, Morocco, because of this new shortened booking window, is still quite open. So something worth knowing for those listening in.
Yeah, that's great info. I'm fascinated by, so there are places in Morocco that you weren't taking travelers there anymore because of over tourism. Before the pandemic, they had just gotten inundated, and now you can go and enjoy them again. That's fascinating.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that I mean, it's sites, it's also specific locations within busier cities like Marrakesh, places that we avoided altogether that you now can explore and enjoy once again. So definitely a window of time that is quite unique and that I encourage everyone to take advantage of.
Exactly. Take advantage of this moment when you can do that. And then also, can you tell us a little bit about the direct flights that can combine, Israel and because of the peace accords?
Yes, absolutely. It's actually quite a historic moment for Morocco because there's a very significant percentage of the Israeli population that's originally of Moroccan descent. So for us, this is the formalization of ties that have been existing socially and in our population for many, many years. And it's really nice that we can now formalize this. So to answer your question, Wendy, you can fly directly now from both Casablanca and Marrakesh straight to Tel Aviv. I had the opportunity to be on one of those flights just last month, in fact, and it was again a pleasure to be able to connect directly without going through Europe, which is what typically people did in the past. So essentially, we can now combine, as been mentioned previously, Morocco with Israel on one trip, and it's very seamless and easy to do.
Great. Well, thank you so much for that update from Morocco. And now we're moving along to Jim Berkeley, Egypt specialist on the WOW list. Jim with Destinations and Adventures International. And Jim, tell us, what would you say is the smart approach to Egypt today in terms of like, what is the best opportunity, sort of new experiences that might have been created by the pandemic? I feel like there are a lot of new open air experiences on offer in Egypt.
Right. Thank you, Wendy. The pandemic did open some doors that were previously not available to travelers, or they were there and people are now thinking more about them. As an example, you could attack the Nile with a normal Nile cruise, or you could use one of the small dahabeyas that have between 6 or 8 or 10 cabins. And of course, everybody these days, post-COVID, is looking to do tourism in not a crowded fashion. So a lot of Egypt is already an outdoor destination. The temples, a lot of the sites are outdoors. And now if you could do this using a dahabeya, cruising between Luxor and Aswan on a small ship, not too many people, that's very attractive. Also, people took advantage during this time to explore a little more deeply. So they started looking at Fayum Oasis, where you could go and do some fantastic bird viewing. And then Egypt also has opened recently Siwa Oasis, which is up near the Mediterranean coast. So that's an area that has not been explored very much either.
And speaking of open air experiences, now you can also have, tell us about what you can do with the pyramids under the stars.
Right, yeah, we can give a private tented dinner under the stars in your own tent by the pyramids. I don't want to tell you the cost.
Okay, good. Probably have a heart attack.
You might.
Now, what about the new, there are some much anticipated new museums coming along. Indoor museums, how are they going to keep those? What's coming and how are they going to keep those COVID safe?
Well, Egypt opened in October 2020, and they were very wise about slowing the pace of people visiting museums. So even today, they're regulating the number of people that go into museums. Having said that, it's hard to make everyone wear a face mask. So we try to be careful and choose the times when we visit museums when they're the least crowded. And the two that are really getting people's attention these days are, first, it's open now, is the new National Museum of Egyptian Civilization. And I think many of you may have seen that they moved the royal mummies from the old Egyptian Museum to this new Egyptian Museum. And they now have what's called the new Royal Mummies Hall. And it's just a beautiful new version of seeing the royalty of ancient Egypt. And then number two, what we're all waiting for with bated breath is the opening of the GEM, the Grand Egyptian Museum. And though nobody knows exactly when this is going to be, bets are, Wendy, it's either going to be November 4, which is the 100th anniversary of when Howard Carter discovered King Tut's tomb, or November 26, when he called Lord Carnarvon in and they actually opened the tomb. So November 4, November 26, that's my bet.
And a lot of people these days want to combine Egypt with Jordan because Jordan has also been open for quite a long time and is another one of those open air places a lot of people have been flocking to. And I'm just curious because you were telling me about these glamping, these tents at Wadi Rum.
Right. Well, yeah, Wadi Rum has always been a little bit under people's radar. But now, again, taking advantage of sites that have less crowded and more open. The glamping under the stars in Wadi Rum at a place called the Bespoke Hideaways Camp is becoming incredibly popular. There are only 6 tents there. It's a little bit like being on safari with Sherry, where you've got only a few safari camps. So that's very popular as well.
Well, sign me up. I think we all want to be on safari with Sherry.
Yes.
So, well, thank you so much, Jim.
Thank you.
And now I see that we've got some, should we look in the Q&A box and see what's in there?
Sure. Yeah. So one of the first questions we got was about the test to get back into the US, which Wendy mentioned. There is still a requirement to show a negative test. It can be a PCR or an antigen test to come into the US. One of the most convenient ways to do that, which I did when I was just on safari in Africa last month, was I brought a test kit with me from the US, signed on to a Zoom video observation session, did the test over video, and had my results within 15 minutes as soon as the test was over. If you don't have a cell phone, or you're going to be someplace where there isn't reliable Wi-Fi for that, anyone on this screen that you see here tonight and anyone on the WOW list can arrange a test for you. They can get clinicians brought to your hotel room, guide you to the nearest pharmacy and make it as quick and easy a process as possible. So there are strategies to make that not interrupt the flow of your trip. We also got a lot of questions about where to go for certain months of the year. Billy, it'd be great if you could put in the link to our series on where to go when. We have articles for each month of the year. Right now, they're focused specifically on what's smart to do in 2022. What destinations still have availability in these coming months. So look to those articles if you have an opportunity to travel in your calendar coming up. Let's see, there are a lot of questions that were answered in the Q&A box. So I'm just trying to catch them all here.
I see that there are some Italy questions here. Do shops, restaurants, sites in Lake Como and Cinque Terre start to close down in late October? Do they, Andrea, or do they? I feel like Lake Como is staying open later. Didn't they have holiday festivities last year?
Yeah, absolutely, Wendy. We are, and also this year we'll have the iconic hotel, Grand Hotel Villa d'Este. They will stay open until the beginning of January. We have the brand new Passa l'Acqua. They will be staying open until at least January. So we are seeing an extension of our traditional season, not just Lake Como and the Cinque Terre, but throughout Italy as well. Low season travel, or the ex-low season travel, is becoming more and more popular.
Mm-hmm. There's also a question here about availability for Egypt at Christmas. Jim, do you want to address that?
Good luck. I wish I could be more positive. We're down to the last bits and pieces of hotel rooms and cruises. If somebody wanted to jump on them, they should tomorrow, immediately. And then maybe thinking about 23, 24.
We have a question about multi-country trips, which, if you've been reading our newsletters and listening to our advice in the last couple of years, we've been cautioning against combining countries because there were so many requirements, so many hoops to jump through to get from country to country. I think now it's kind of, I would say, cautiously optimistic about combining countries and being smart about which ones you combine. Kind of going in knowing that there could be an increase in cases in the coming months, and countries could potentially add entry requirements. Many countries in Europe, for example, have lifted all of their entry requirements. So the more countries you combine, the greater the possibility that things will change. But as, for instance, I just was in Africa and combined South Africa and Namibia very successfully. Must have crossed borders 4 or 5 times over the course of the trip, and all went quite smoothly. So probably 3 countries, Wendy, would you say is kind of the max that we're recommending right now?
I really think it depends on where in the world you are and how you're doing it. I just feel like some countries are much more likely to resume entry requirements than others are. That's why an expert is so helpful with that kind of advice about what it's okay to combine and what it's not. I really think it depends very much on the geography and also how you're trying to combine them. But Sherry, do you want to say something about entry requirements, or because Africa just dropped a whole lot of its requirements?
Yeah, and most countries now, it's not true of every place. Very few countries suddenly, and it's sort of a snowball effect here. One doesn't, and then boom, there they go. But very few are requiring PCR tests. Most are just requiring proof of vaccination. If you don't have a vaccination with the booster in some cases, then you need to have a PCR test. But it's very easy now. We just went to 3 countries. It was so much easier than it was 6 months ago. But what I would caution people on is airlines. Choose your airlines really carefully, because there's an absolute shuffle going on with all the routes and the predictability of whether or not your flight is going to go or not. So stick with the more tried and true airlines that have very stable schedules. And I would spend some time with your travel expert or Googling around to make sure that they've been running consistently, because that's the biggest problem, not COVID. it's airlines.
There's a question about, is there a cost to contacting someone on the trusted traveler list, on our WOW list of trusted travel experts, to see if a trip is feasible? So every person you'll find on the WOW list has promised to us that they will have a conversation with any traveler who comes to them by our website. So you don't have to know yet whether your dates are going to work, whether there's going to be availability. They're happy to have a conversation with you. And we don't charge anything for our services either to connect you with these travel planners.
There's a question here about combining New Zealand and Australia. To do New Zealand and Australia properly, how many weeks do you suggest? 5 or 6 weeks or longer? I wish we had that much time. I don't think, I mean, you can do it in 3 weeks, can't you, Sarah?
Yes, I do. I think 3 weeks is really the minimum you'd want, but you definitely could do quite comfortably 3 weeks. I guess the ideal is to have 2 weeks in each destination, but some might have 2 weeks in one and 10 days in the other, or something around that. 5 to 6 weeks, fantastic. You'll have a dream trip throughout both destinations. That's really magical.
We did get a couple questions about Southeast Asia. We do have a Southeast Asia specialist joining us on Wednesday evening for that Zoom. So if those of you who have questions about Thailand and Cambodia, if you can join us on Wednesday, we'll have someone who can speak to those questions. And someone also asked about whether the questions would be available after this Zoom is over. We'll be sending out an email with all of the links that Billy is furiously typing into the chat. I know it's hard to keep up with everything she's putting in there, and there is a lot of great intel in those articles. So you will rest assured you will have time to look through all those links after we're done here.
There's a question here about entry requirements into London. And my understanding is that London is basically now like everyone's welcome. I mean, you know, no COVID restrictions. It's back to pre-pandemic times when it comes to England. Isn't that, Brooke, is that right?
That's right. Yes. That's quite a bit of Europe has decided to lift all entry requirements. So it's just as if you were traveling there in 2019. It's not across the board, but many places have. And I expect we'll see more and more of that.
And you can go party at 10 Downing Street too.
Let's see, other questions.
Someone asked about Japan during cherry blossom in 2023. We don't have a Japan expert here tonight. The rumor is that Japan will open to travelers this fall. That is not confirmed yet. So, you know, don't hold me to it. I'm sure cherry blossom for next year is already very busy. As I think it was Ali who said that, you know, those peak seasons, you're competing with 2 years worth of travelers who are hoping to go, in this case, to Japan over, you know, the spring cherry blossom season in 2020 and 2021. So if you're looking at that for 2023, you'll want to get started immediately.
Here's a question for Jason in Malta. Are there many flights between Palermo and Malta?
Yes, there are. I believe there's 4 a week. And if you want to think even coming to Catania, like we've got 3 a day. So lots of connections from Sicily, including a ferry.
I think a lot of people, it's increasingly popular to combine Sicily with Malta.
Mm-hmm. It's a perfect combination because we're so close to each other, yet have so much similarities, yet so different. You know, like from the culinary aspect and historical aspect, we're very similar, yet, you know, architecture were quite different, and the language and so forth. So it is definitely a perfect pairing. In fact, Marcello and I, Agave Travel Creative, we actually work quite closely together. He's another Wendy Perrin travel expert as well.
Yeah. I think in general, European countries are so much easier to combine right now that the entry requirements have been dropped. So much easier now than was the case 6 months ago, for instance. it's just you want to do it carefully so that, you know, if something changes somewhere, and you also, travelers also need to book their flights carefully, you know, just make sure that you're not transiting in one place that sort of has different rules than where you know, you don't want your flight, if it's a problematic connection where you need to have one set of requirements for that and then another set for getting in, that's where it can kind of be tricky. Let's see, I think, I guess it's 7 o'clock and we're done with most questions. We'll certainly be answering more questions in our other Wow Week sessions this week. So I hope you all will join us. You can, I think Billy is typing into the chat box the link to the schedule with our whole Wow Week lineup. And we'll also be sending out an email to everybody who was here today with the full schedule and the other travel chats that we'd love for you to join this week. So thank you to the audience for joining us, and all of our trusted travel experts from the Wow List. Thank you so much for staying up late and being here with us today. I know that these travelers are hugely appreciative, and we can't wait to see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.